Chase Thomas podcast. My nephew needs me to record. See, I already hate it. I hate it.
All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of A Pod Divided here on the Chase Thomas podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee, Everything School HQ. Many forget, not on this pod, not here, not after a week away, where Everything HQ still resides. Top 10 basketball, top 10 baseball, right there on the border of top 10.
Is it even baseball season right now?
It's always baseball season here in Knoxville, Tennessee, Matt Green, when you're the king of the kings in the sport. And you've got Manny Ramirez son in the fold. Like, it's just a little bit different. I know you Athens folks.
Is that right?
Yeah, y'all are in dormant right now. But, maybe one day, maybe the new coach will be the guy that gets Georgia baseball back on track. You do have a top 5 player this year going to the draft, so... Cognan? What is it? Was
it Lanolin?
No, it's
like
Cognan.
Sheepspool?
It's 2 C names.
I was quoting Ron Burgundy. No, I don't know. I don't even know what their class is. I have seen a couple like really big time dudes, I think, that are like high school.
Well, no, he's already
seniors.
there. Like, he's been there for a couple of years. He's pretty good.
Gotcha.
He gave Tennessee a lot of problems last year. This is where we're at with Georgia baseball fans. They don't even know who their best player is. He's a top 5 guy going into this year. No idea. No idea. I'm pulling it up right now because it's going to drive me nuts. Not Corey Collins, not Clayton Chadwick.
In terms of players that like never played for one of my teams, I
Charlie
feel like
Condon, that's it.
Charlie Condon, fair enough. But yeah, in terms of players who never played for one of my teams, I think Manny Ramirez, he's got to be up there of just one of the all-time greats. Just Manny being Manny.
Absolutely. Well, fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green is here, as you've heard, jumping out of the gate here. He's feeling good. His team finishes number 1 in the 2024 recruiting rankings this year. Early National Signing Day wrapping up with some big names still out there. Tennessee still talking with the 5-star defensive tackle McKinley, who did not sign with Texas A&M today, so we'll see where he ends up. Jordan Seaton still looming out there. He was on Instagram Live before we got on here. Boo Carter and other folks were talking to him on there, so we'll see what Jordan Seaton still ends up doing now. It looks like Maryland is the favorite, the home state originally for Jordan, after him going on national television to pick Colorado 2 weeks ago. So I guess we'll see what happens there, but most of the dust has settled. Even some late drama, whether or not Jeremiah Smith actually put pen to paper on his Ohio State commitment.
But he is official now.
Yeah, just real hilarious stuff on that front. But it was this was like the most high school, or the most like throwback college football signing day we've had in a long time. And I don't know if you feel that way, where the last couple of years it felt like we haven't been glued to what's going on throughout the day, and like all the crazy flips and all the crazy last minute changes and the uncertainty with so many top programs and so many guys and where they might end up. I feel like this was the most entertaining, drama filled, crazy national signing day in college football we've had in a really long time. This was like actually a lot of fun throughout the whole day. My team didn't have any flips, and it was fine. It was just business as usual, so maybe that's why I enjoyed it more, because there wasn't a whole lot of drama with Tennessee's class today. But I don't know. I don't know if you felt the same way, but I felt like this was a big win for college football, that it was this kind of crazy and this much intrigue all across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there was some like weird instances that were entertaining today, but I don't think we'll ever get back to like anywhere close to what it used to be. I think they said like 95% of the top 24/7 was like committed already coming into the day. It's like we're used to like ESPN and like these other CBS Sports and stuff would have these national commitment ceremonies and everything like on the air, and it's like it felt like today, just kind of watching the coverage. I was watching a lot of the 24/7 YouTube coverage, and it was going for like 7 straight hours, and it was a lot of just like checking in, like, oh, let's go to this team, let's break down this position. It wasn't as much of, it was honestly better because recruiting has gotten so hectic. I'm like, I just kind of want to educate myself on who's bringing in what. So it wasn't as crazy of just like, okay, at 8:45, we got so-and-so committing. And then at 9:30, we got so-and-so committing. And then 11 o'clock, so I don't think we'll ever get like that old era of just just madness and not knowing what guys are going to do, pulling out puppy dogs and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, Jeremiah Smith, a person pretending to sign, that's definitely new for me.
Yeah, I mean, stuff like that is that's great. You have coaches actively complaining about where they thought they were with guys going into the day, and coaches catching feelings with certain players picking certain teams late. And then, I mean, we had the Florida drop today, which had to be demoralizing if you're a Florida fan. Where are they at? 15th now, as it's all said and done, I want to say?
They're now at 16th.
Oof. And folks, they were top 5 like less than a week ago. And it got bad in a hurry.
So I got a little bit to say about Florida real quick.
Okay.
I want to take you in a time machine, sir. It's the morning of October 28th, right? World's largest outdoor cocktail party is that day. The Gators are sitting at 5-2. LJ McCray just committed that week. Got the 3rd ranked recruiting class in the country. Like, still a legitimate chance to win the SEC. 1 conference loss going to that. In less than 2 months, all Florida has done is lose 5 straight games, miss a bowl game, lose, I think, 6 4-star commits and at least 1 5-star, go from the 3rd ranked recruiting class in the country to now 16th in less than 2 months. Like, I've never seen this level of, I don't know, collapse ever in a college football program. I've never seen an off season so bad that you were like, yeah, we should just fire the coach. but like, I feel like I was a Georgia fan during the Mark Richt era. Like, you don't know the negativity that Georgia fans experienced from 2010 to 2015. It was just a toxic environment to be a fan. And that's a program that made multiple SEC championships during that period, won 10 games, probably like 3 or 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a toxic atmosphere. I cannot imagine what positive comments are coming out of Florida fans' mouths right now, and especially going in next September, when legitimately you're going to have 11 games next year that are a single-digit point spread. Like, they're not going to be favored to beat half their schedule. Like, so with the recruiting was the saving grace. And that's kind of what I told you. And what one of my kind of reservations on Heupel is not having that bump class. Even though he had a really great year 2, he didn't get that top 5 class. For Billy Napier to get the off-field recruiting success before the on-field success, it's like, that's almost more impressive. He's selling a vision. People are buying in. Florida with a 3rd ranked recruiting class, like, that's legit. I don't care if we're missing bowl games like year 1, year 2. Like, I guess they did make a bowl game, but they lost it year 1. But that was enough saving grace to, like, okay, Florida's moving in the right direction. At 16th, like, the recruiting's not good. We're gonna lose. I don't think this team's gonna go to a bowl game next year. There's a lot that still's got to happen in the portal and everything, but man, I just cannot imagine. I can't remember another like more toxic, just like completely negative vibe around an entire program like Florida is right now. It was just every time you looked up today, another Florida dude was flipping to Auburn, to Texas A&M. Like, it was outrageous. They did at least hold on to DJ Lagway and LJ McCray,
which are 2 big holds.
2 5-stars for sure. Mm-hmm. But man, it's I think they're only down to like 16 commits at this point. So yeah, it's bad.
That's also one of the other jarring things is you go through and you're looking at rankings and you're going through who has it what, and then like Colorado's like 6 commits, and you just look at all these different schools with like crazy disparity between the number of commits. That's also just, I don't know if that's ever going to be normal for me, where it's just really weird. Now we're including transfers in the classes. So you're seeing those like welcome to blank, and it's also some transfers, and I just couldn't imagine being a casual college football fan. Like, it's got to be just extremely overwhelming.
No, that's definitely true. It's they're turning more and more of us into casuals because we're just like, I can't keep up with this. How much was his NIL value? I don't care. I just want to watch him play on Saturday.
That part I don't really pay attention to because like that's just not out there in the open, and that's just like there's no reason unless you're working for a collective to really need to know. stuff like that. But I will say, I mean, it was an interesting day by and large to the end, and I'm just glad that we had some intrigue because it was kind of a throwback, and with the calendar being what it is and bowl season, which we can touch on real quick. You and I was wondering if you had been, because we obviously were gone last week, so we didn't do bowl picks or anything like that. And like this year, I mean, we did it last year, and Matt, bowl season's cooked. Like part of me, it's really sad that this is where we're at, but I also don't think it's really the playoffs' fault. Like it's not a playoff issue. What's happened now is the portal being so wide open and kids having to leave at this point in time, all of these kids having to, because the semester starts and they're trying to jump in the boat, because also the early national signing day is right now on December 21st. So guys are having to make quick decisions. They're seeing what spots are open. They're trying to jump in different boats to make sure they don't get left behind. So the portal, you have over 1,200 kids and all this stuff. Like it's a crazy number of people. So you have all these opt-outs. You have guys getting ready for the draft. You have guys having to jump out and go into their next team and leave their team. You also have like freshmen coming in who are coming into campus early, so they're practicing with the team. You have obviously, like I said, the bowl opt-outs for the seniors who are getting ready for the draft. And then you have coaching changes because there was a lot of coaching movement too. And you're like, there's just a recipe for disaster all across the board. And I just don't know how you get this on the right track because the calendar is so messed up in college football. I don't know how you fix this because classes start in January and guys have to leave with the way the calendar is structured. And if that's the case, all these are glorified scrimmages. Like Tennessee's down to just a couple bodies at corner because of all the turnover and stuff like that. They're not real games. And I don't know. It just is a major bummer. I don't know if you feel the same, but I'm like, I don't want to be negative about this, but I don't know of another way of just saying that, like, it's bad. Like, but bowl season's cooked.
Yeah, without a doubt. Like I have thoughts about the college football calendar, but I'll get to that in a minute. But I look at it, I think the college football playoff gets blamed for killing bowl season. I don't know that that's what it was. It seems like that's around the time that we started to hear talk about, meaningless bowl games and the Christian McCaffreys of the world sitting out of bowl games and things like that. I don't, part of it could have just been, was it maybe just the Jalen Smith injury in the Fiesta Bowl the one year that really turned him from like a top 5 pick to like a second round pick to play in a Fiesta Bowl versus Ohio State that was a top 10 matchup, but there was nothing really on the line. So maybe more players took notice of that. And it's like, this game really isn't worth it. I can't necessarily, it's a bummer as a fan, to see these big time games. But we could deal with that. We could deal with, okay, well, yeah, he's going to be a first rounder. He's not going to play. We're going to see Florida and Oklahoma play, and Florida's best 3 skill players are out, and Oklahoma's got all these players opting out. But now that this transfer portal aspect variable is thrown in there, now it's like we got to fill a roster. Like that's where I don't know how how this is really a sustainable model. Like you're seeing now, like we talked about a few weeks ago, like Alabama hired a coach that Michigan fired, a guy that was on their staff this year. And it's like, he's going to be a part of the bowl prep. Like, okay, so what's preventing a player from leaving a team this year and then being a part of the team for the bowl game? Like, I think honestly, Malik Murphy going to the portal should be like the red flag of all red flags, that it's like college football is in a crisis. Like, heaven forbid Quinn Ewers gets hurt in a college football playoff game and they got to go to their backup quarterback and they're going to go to a third stringer that's played. Obviously, Arch Manning's like a big time prospect, but they're going to go to a guy who's basically hasn't played all season. Like Malik Murphy has been, and Quinn Ewers is down, and Malik Murphy actually had to start a game or two. And because of how jacked up the college football calendar is, this guy feels like I have to go somewhere else for like my career. I need to go ahead and get somewhere, enroll for the spring semester. And like, that's just, we're in a huge, it's until it wasn't affecting the playoff. It sucked for those other bowl games. Now that's affected the playoff, that players are not sticking around for actual playoff games. Like this is a red flag.
And we're not blaming Malik. Like Malik was sad. That's even the worst part is like
Yeah.
he was upset that he's having to do it. But he's like, look, man, like I don't know what else to do. Like the calendar is what the calendar is, and all these spots are gonna fill up. I have to go. So you're like, I mean, I don't know how you fix that though, because the calendar is what the calendar is. So when we expand the playoff, are we going to have some that opt out after the first round because of when the playoffs are, and then they see the landscape where like Malik is there for the first game and then he's gone for the second one because he just finally has to jump out? I mean, it's
like I know
so
I'm
messed
starting
up.
at Baylor and we're in the playoff, but I could start at Alabama next year if I go ahead and just leave and enroll early. Yeah, so this is what my proposal for the college football calendar. We've talked about it a few times before. Early signing day should be in August, and there is no getting out of signing early your early letter of intent if a coach or something leaves. Like if you sign in August, you have to enroll at that school in spring. That would be my spring, fall, whenever you're enrolling. You sign early. Like if you're not sure you want to go there, just wait till the later signing day. The later signing day should be in March. That way, football, NFL coaches are getting hired and fired. College coaches are going to the NFL, all that sort of thing. You got March to get position coaches and everybody in there for an actual national signing day. We never needed the early signing period for guys to enroll early. Like if you just want to enroll in school in January, you didn't have to sign early. Like that was never a thing. So you can still enroll even if you didn't sign your national letter of intent at any point. So it doesn't affect the early enrollees in any way. And then I think you get to the postseason, and we got conference championship weekend, the first weekend of December. There's no more Heisman bye week. Like if you want a Heisman trophy, give it out on a Wednesday, give it out on a Tuesday or something. I don't know. Give the Sunday after conference championship. But we got to go straight from conference championship into the playoff. And we're going to have a 3 weeks, right? The round of 12, round of 8, 4 weeks, round of 4, and then the championship. So hopefully the championship can be on like January 1st, that like first week of January, like that sort of thing. January 1st is just such a huge TV day for bowl games. So I know that they want those like semifinal games around there, big time bowl games, something like that. Also, this is what nobody else is talking about. Cardale Jones tried to tell you people a decade ago, they're not playing school. They're not there to play school. These college football programs are the biggest money makers these universities have. So for that reason, move the damn academic calendar back a couple weeks. No Division I, no school of Division I college football should start their spring semester before January 20th, right? Like you move that back the third week of January, some sort of whatever you want to make it, so that it doesn't interfere with the college football playoff postseason. Guys have ample time to finish out their commitment with their team, figure out the university they want to enroll in for the spring. That's how I fix college football right there, sir.
I don't hate that. Also, just like, why do they have to be in, like, just put them in the middle semester? Like the middle, why do they have to be enrolled? Maybe that's a new rule, is where they're in the university, but they don't take classes or whatever, or they don't have, you know what I mean? There's got to be a way around the portal windows being what they are because of classes starting back.
There's so many online classes, right?
Yeah.
Like you can probably figure out something, transferable credits or something like that. Because they're different students. Like we all know this. They shouldn't necessarily be treated the exact same. There's a way around it so that they're taking.
Well, there is a major way around it, which is you separate them from the university altogether, and we just you license Tennessee, you license University of Georgia, and they can do school on their own time. They are allowed to do that. You can use a free.
Hey, there's obviously, like the commercial says, there's a lot of these guys. 99% of them are going pro in something other than sports. So there's obviously, they're not all professional athletes.
No.
So the education is a valuable aspect of getting the scholarship. So you don't have to up in the entire system. I just think you need to do something more so that we're not just in this chaotic month of like Alabama and Michigan and Washington, Texas are prepping for the biggest games of the season right now. And their coaches are flying around the country trying to sign high schoolers. Like this, we're messed up. Like we're not doing these things right. So we just need to get the sport a little bit back on the rails.
And there's no czar. So I don't think it does. I just think we're going to continue just doing crazy stuff in the sport until they split from the NCAA and have their own governing body. Maybe the CFP creates their own governing body. That I don't know. But there needs to be a split sooner rather than later. Chip Kelly had a great outline about what he would do that I liked a lot, that I would highly encourage folks to listen his 2.5 minute answer from last week. I really enjoyed that, and I just love Chip. But
and Chip Kelly, he was talking about, right, like the college football conferences can just be arbitrary, right? Like they don't even need them. Like Notre Dame is in a different conference than other sports. So obviously you're able to do that. But I'm saying you can still keep their students at the university still and do something like what Chip Kelly is doing. Like you don't have to make these guys just pro athletes and they just happen to be living on the campus of this university and they're not affiliated with the school in any way. Like, I don't think that's the answer.
It might be where we're headed. I don't know. Who knows? It's just that something has to change because this December calendar is absurd. And I couldn't imagine how terrible it's got to be for these coaches all across sports, especially like the ones you said who are literally preparing for the college football playoff. And they're also having to bust their ass doing this down the stretch. So more power to them. That's what the money is for.
Of course. But also like we're talking about them. Like what about, like we said, we haven't even been paying attention to the bowl games. Georgia Southern played in a bowl game a couple days ago, right? Like those other programs that aren't doing very well, that are playing mid-December bowl games, no disrespect to the mid-December, it might have been your best season in years, but you're not playing in a big time bowl. Like you're literally playing in a game within days of signing day. Like this, we just got to do something about this.
Well, you know what else you could do? You could move the start of the season up so that bowls happen earlier, and a lot of these bad bowls happen end of November, early December. Like maybe that's part of it. You finish up all those. Like I don't know. Like I think the calendar needs to move up anyway.
Those early September Saturdays are pretty hot in the South, and I don't know if I want to move those into August.
Yeah, I mean, look,
playing a noon kickoff in Gainesville, Florida on August 17th. I don't know.
You got to do something because December is broken in college football. Any final things? Let's hit Georgia, who we said is number one. They have the number one signing class here. Matt Green lose Dylan Raiola, which was growingly expected, to Nebraska. He posted a poem about his decision to make the flip to Nebraska. His uncle is the offensive line coach. Obviously, his dad played at Nebraska.
Yeah.
It's hey, Kyle McCord we thought was going to go with him, and then Kyle McCord, because Fran Brown's out here doing work up at Syracuse, pulls Kyle McCord from Ohio State. But also a guy who was like a Georgia Bulldog assistant coach like a couple weeks ago, and now he's just like putting in work at Syracuse. Life comes at you fast, Matt Green. But you gain KJ Bolden in a huge late flip. The Buford curse is over for Georgia as they land big time Buford safety in KJ. But what do you make of Georgia wrapping up the number one overall class in 2024, Matt Green?
They did get Isaac Nada a couple years ago, and there's obviously been a Buford player here or there. But yeah,
not the same pedigree,
does seem like the big time Buford guys never go to Georgia. So to lose Dylan Raiola and still have the number one class before signing KJ Bolden, that was it just shows how loaded this Georgia class has really been. Like it's a classic Kirby Smart class, really. Like this is the third number one class Kirby Smart has signed, 7th top 3 class in the last 8 years. So number one corner, number one safety, number one linebacker. Like it's a pretty loaded class. And actually I saw the last 3 number one safeties in the country from Jefferson, from Mill Creek, and from Buford. Like that area, I don't know what Northern Gwinnett, Jackson County is doing with safeties, but But yeah, so Georgia obviously with a loaded class, but Dylan Raiola, I'm glad you said it on this poem. Like, what is this guy doing with the poem? I feel like I expect this from someone who's like new to the limelight. You know what I mean? Like your dad's a professional athlete. Like when you told your dad you're going to do this, he had to think like, really, bro, you're going to like decommit from Georgia with like a poem and you're going to compare yourself to Johnny Rodgers and Eric Crouch and these other great Nebraska players. Like, and I don't know. It was just, I think it's, good luck to Dylan Raiola. I think it's a questionable decision. I think Georgia fans have to be happy about Ryan Puglisi in this class because he was committed to Georgia. Raiola committed, and he said, "Okay, like I'm still going to Georgia." And the fact that he never wavered from that, I think was always. I think that did a lot for him in the eyes of Georgia fans, and maybe just says something about this guy's confidence in himself. But yeah, Georgia with another loaded class this year.
Yeah, and I mean they lost a lot in the portal, but part of the reason they're losing guys in the portal is because they have a lot of talented dudes behind them, right? Like that seems to be the issue there with James Dumas-Johnson winding up at Kentucky and as a transfer. Marvin ended up at Florida State. Like it's not because of an issue with where Georgia is. It's not a panic meter. It's just because the snaps just aren't there because you have these young 5-stars behind them pushing, and it's just they're crowded with talent. That's what it seems like from the outside looking in. Is that what's going on there?
For sure. I mean, it's just you look at there's like 16 in the portal to this point, and obviously Georgia's going to have a few early draft entries, not too many this year, but. And then you look at what are they bringing in 28 in this year's class?
28. Yep.
So yeah, it's like you gotta there's some attrition that's bound to happen. And I don't know if other Georgia fans feel this way, but Xavier Story is transferring to Arkansas. I think I've seen multiple guys going to Syracuse. There's something about when these guys go to like somewhere else that a former Kirby Smart coach is, it's like, okay, I'm happy for it. It's like he wants to be at Georgia, but he's not good enough, so he's gonna go to the next best thing and go to a guy who used to coach at Georgia. But yeah, so Fran Brown, especially Fran Brown, like I think KJ Bolden apparently said something like the way Fran Brown talked about Georgia after he left was like a reason that he gave Georgia like another look. So I think definitely shout out Fran Brown for everything he did for Georgia's defensive back group while he was there.
No doubt. Matt Green, to pivot quickly, because I'm sure the good folks are curious about Tennessee's class here. Overall, like the Tennessee Vols Sports Guys, we were talking about it over text and stuff. One of the things that's been very frustrating for the Vols recruiting of basically since August is they've missed on all of their big time targets. Like we went through the list, but like Chris Cole, who ended up at Georgia, he was one of those early ones who was down to Tennessee. Kai Bates was Tennessee would finish number 2 for him both times, first with LSU, then with Florida State. Then you had obviously Jordan Seaton. It looked like you were leading there late, and then he goes to Colorado, and now he's going to Maryland. Maybe you still end up with Jordan Seaton because that one just has so many twists and turns that it wouldn't shock me if he still wound up in Knoxville. It wouldn't shock me if he didn't. You were just all over the place. Ryan Wingo, you were still in play for. Like you get Mike Matthews, 5-star receiver. You get the 5-star edge, number 1 edge in 247, and Jordan Ross. Probably helped by James Pierce becoming an absolute dog this past year for Tennessee and breaking out on that side. So that's a big recruiting win to go into Alabama and pull that kid from Vestavia Hills with the amount that Auburn and Alabama pulled. I think that's a big hold for Tennessee there, but. A lot of good defensive talent here. They did really good on the offensive line. Bennett Warren, good player, offensive tackle from Texas. So you get him in the boat. You get Gage Ginther, another offensive tackle that Colorado really wanted from the state of Colorado. And then the transfer portal, you do okay. You wind up with Jamon McCoy transfer, who's a 4-star transfer from Oregon State. He started as a true freshman. He'll start on one side probably from Ricky Gibson. You get Holden Stays, who's the best tight end in the portal from Notre Dame. So I think he was a big win. So him and Ethan Davis being your 2 tight ends going into next year. That's a big win for Alec Ablin and company. And then Jacoby Thomas, probably just a rotation guy, transfer from Middle Tennessee State. So we'll see where he fits in. But I mean, it's a fine class, but I think one of the weirder parts, and I think what frustrates Tennessee, is they didn't finish strong, but the last 2 classes, like, they're still the best Tennessee has recruited over the last 2 years since the Fulmer era. Like, and you look at the player ratings average, 91 point something. It's number 11 in the country, and they finished number 13 overall. It's not quite where you want to be. There was a chance if you close on Seton, Roger Saliapunga, who ended up at Oregon, maybe a couple more of those guys, you're right there at the 5 spot. And it's just the margins are so thin here. And you saw with recruiting and like how quickly it can change for Florida today. Look, it could have gone way worse. You kept the guys you need to keep. You're right there. You'll be in the blue chip ratio going into next year. It's where you want to be. I think the other big thing that's kind of a surprise is like Nico wasn't a big recruiter. Like he didn't bring in as many big guys with him that you may have thought the number 1 overall player in last year's cycle would bring in. We're all still excited. It's not really, it's not an indictment on Nico or anything. It's just kind of surprising that he didn't bring more with him. Cause I mean, he's a cool player. He's huge. And when you listen to other recruits talk about him,
cool guy.
Yeah. Like he's calm, cool, collected. Like he's just a cool dude. And obviously extremely talented. People know about the NIL deal and all that, but everyone's excited. And you would assume because of just how many elite quarterbacks there are to go around that if you're a 4-star, 5-star playmaker, or really anybody, you want to come play with Nico for 2 years because it seems like the upside's pretty high to play with someone who could be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft in a couple of years. So that's been probably the biggest surprise, is that you didn't go from like a 10 to 12 team ranking number to like 5 to 9 at least one of these 2 years. But they're going to be in the blue chip ratio. We'll see what happens. And you just need stability at Tennessee. That's where I'm just at, is like Heupel isn't quite where he needs this program to be recruiting wise to compete with the Georgias, the Bamas of the world year in, year out. But they have the roster and the depth and the young talent they do have. It's good enough to make the playoff. It's good enough to be one of those 12-team playoff teams going into next year. And then I think my gut tells me with the 2025 in-state class, that's Tennessee is strong in-state going into next year. And kind of what you just saw with Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin and how aggressive they were in the portal. My gut tells me 2025 is the year to watch, or I guess 2024 going into 2025 for Tennessee, because it'll be year 2 for Nico. A lot of in-state talent, a lot of these guys. And my gut tells me they're going to be heavy in the portal, just kind of stacking to see if they can make a national title run this following year. But look, it's fine. It's that you didn't close well with some guys that you needed to hit on to get to that top 5, top 8 number. But by and large, you're stable. Josh Heupel's already won a lot of games. Big year in year 4 to see how things go with Nico. What happens to recruiting next year if Nico balls out and players see Nico being a Heisman type guy right away? What kind of effect does that have? My guess is that would be a nice help. But look, it's fine. Like, it's really hard. Recruiting right now, especially in the SEC, is a bloodbath. And I also think, sneakily, Auburn being back really hurt Tennessee, because some of those guys you just think Tennessee would have been more in play for, and Oklahoma getting right hurt Tennessee, and Mizzou kind of getting right hurt Tennessee in a way. So certain programs that they've won recruiting battles with the last couple of years, it's just harder to win because, I mean, Auburn being the big winner here, being back and recruiting on an onslaught this year.
Yeah, Auburn, this was their first top 10 class since 2020. So it's been a few years since Auburn's been up there. And Miami finishing number 3. This was their first top 5 class since 2008. So like Miami, that's just a total wild card being thrown in there. But the biggest thing when I look at Tennessee's recruiting is they had the 13th ranked recruiting class, right? Penn State had the 14th ranked recruiting class, and it's the 3rd ranked recruiting class in the conference, now with Oregon being in the Big Ten. Clemson had the 12th ranked recruiting class in the country, and it's the 3rd ranked class in the ACC. Tennessee, right in between both of those teams, signing essentially the same class as Penn State and Clemson. They're the 7th best class in the SEC, with Oklahoma and Texas coming in now. And that's just Damn, it's tough. It's tough to win when you have basically a middle of the road roster in the SEC. As good as 13th in the country is, that's what it is in the SEC. That can be average when it comes down to it on Saturdays.
That's why you have to kill it in the portal, and you can't do it every year, right? Like you can do 12th, 13th, whatever this year. You need to be at the 7th, 8th next year, and then you can fall. You know what I mean? Like you can't live in that zone every year.
There's no reason. Yeah, there's no reason Tennessee can't be in that teetering on top 5 classes. Like they're a big time program, and they have the big time NIL to go with it. And Josh Heupel is, a proven offensive mind. But yeah, I think this year is definitely big. This upcoming 2024 and the 2025 recruiting class will definitely be big to keep the momentum going.
Absolutely. Well, Matt Green, we have a couple burning questions. We'll do these sporadically during the college football off season, even though it's not the off season, but it kind of is until the playoff. We'll do our playoff predictions and big preview going into next week's shows, because I will be here before you know it, sir. Like the playoff will be here in 10 days, just about, when this goes up. But before we get into that, Matt Green, we didn't mention this one thing that happened with Georgia this week. Carson Beck is back. So I ask you, resident Georgia Bulldog analyst and superfan Matt Green, how big is it for Georgia to get Carson Beck back next year?
I saw in one of your social media posts, you tagged me as a super fan, and I don't know. I feel like that, it doesn't do me justice on my credibility. They'd be like, "Oh, this guy's just super fan." I can't. Got to take it with a grain of salt. No. But Carson Beck coming back, I mean, I think that's massive news for Georgia. I think we don't know Quinn Ewers is back. He said he's coming back, but you talk about the contenders coming into 2024. Like Georgia's going to have as good of quarterback as anyone in college football. Like this guy's a potential number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. So yeah, I mean, I think it's massive. A second year starting, like you're seeing Georgia making some moves in the portal to get even better playmakers. Obviously, they're not going to have a Brock Bowers on the team next year. So it's hard to say their playmakers will be as good without a 3-time All-American. But I mean, I think with Carson Beck back, I mean, that has to just be one less thing to worry about, that you feel like Georgia's floor is going to be very, very high when you're not really worried about the quarterback position.
Right. I think it's interesting because it feels like one of the funny things I saw from Georgia fans, I was kind of surprised, was like, this shows that this makes their title run easier. Like, would you have been concerned that they couldn't win the title with Gunnar Stockton going in next year? Or do you think they would have gone with the portal? What do you think they would have done? And what would you have preferred they have done if Carson Beck left?
I think they would definitely have gone to the portal if Beck was gone. I mean, I don't know. Supposedly that's one of the reasons Raiola looked elsewhere, was I think that was discussed, that if Beck goes, that Georgia probably would look to the portal. Who knows what's true and what's not, but I think, yeah, absolutely. Like Gunnar Stockton's completely unproven. Like this guy is a big time prospect, but not even like, it's not like he was a can't miss 5-star prospect or something. Like I think he's big time and he wants to go to Georgia. And so that right there says something about him not being afraid of the competition and that sort of thing in the crowded QB room. But yeah, I mean, there was a lot of question losing Stetson Bennett and having a guy like Carson Beck as a first-time starter that had been in the system for a while. It's like doing that again, and we've seen even less of Gunnar Stockton than we've seen of Carson Beck. It's like he's going from 3rd string to 1st string at that point. Like at least Beck got all the backup duty in 2022. Like Vandergriff was getting all the backup duty in 2023. So yeah, I think without a doubt their championship, their realistic chances of a championship are significantly higher with Beck coming back.
And look, I think
Georgia fans are still scarred from Jamie Newman going to the portal to try to get a stopgap at the quarterback position.
Yeah. Are we assuming they're better next year? Do you think, based on this class and what's coming back and with all the portal departures, do you think Georgia will be better than the Georgia we saw this year?
It's hard to say because Brock Bowers is definitely the best player on the team. So he's just a tight end. He's probably not as important as the quarterback, but he's just a difference maker. So you look at the skill players Georgia's going to have. I feel like those probably won't be significantly worse. Like the running back, the two Kendall Milton's gone, so I think Edwards might be gone too. So like the running back, it wasn't a great year at the position, so that could be just as good, if not better. But I think you look at the defense, there's a lot of youth on the defensive side. Jamon Dumas-Johnson going to Kentucky, like that was one that kind of was like a head scratcher for a lot of people. But I think you saw, for one, he didn't have a great season probably the first half of the year, and then he got hurt. And so you already saw CJ Allen kind of taking some of his snaps when he was actually healthy. And then once he got hurt, CJ Allen and Raylan Wilson both played a lot. So I think there was a chance that Jamon Dumas-Johnson's snaps were just going to go down next year, and Georgia was probably going to sub a lot, and he wants to go somewhere and be the number one guy, and he's at Kentucky now. So I think there's a very good chance that Georgia is just as good as they were in 2023, if not better. So, Javon Bullard is still a guy who could potentially come back for his senior year. I think no Georgia players have declared to this point. I think Kamari Lassiter is probably a candidate to go pro, but this defense doesn't have a lot of just like superstars that are leaving for the draft or anything. You could get a lot of these guys back next year, and they could just be that much better. So I know Van Pran and probably Amarius Mims is probably gone on the offensive line, but yeah, I mean, you look at 2023 with how this team was built. It's like, you could argue right now that Georgia is still the best team in the country. Like if you put them on a neutral field with anybody, they may be favored over every single team in college football. Alabama beat them, so they're not playing for the playoff. But the way this team was constructed was perfectly capable of winning a championship. So they could be just like they could be just like they were in 2023 and 2024 and be capable of winning a championship again.
We shall see. That's why they play the games, Matt Green.
Absolutely. And the schedule is obviously the wild card there too. Like They only have 3 home games in the SEC, Clemson out of conference, Texas and Alabama on the road. So the schedule is no joke. There's going to be no but about what Georgia's doing on the field next year. If they start 5-0, 6-0, they're going to be like the consensus, like number one team in the country. So there won't be anything to say about the strength of schedule.
Speaking of just contenders and everything else, Ole Miss, obviously, we'll see what happens with Walter Nolan, the number one player in the portal altogether. He's down to Oregon and Ole Miss reportedly. Buy or sell, Matt Green? Ole Miss is building, because I think there's 2 different conversations here, and I'm curious where you're at with this. Buy or sell? Ole Miss is building a 2024 contender for an actual title, or are they building just a playoff contender? Because I've heard contender thrown around and them going for it. I'm hearing a lot of Ole Miss is going for it. So for you, Juice Wells, good give.
Before
Walter
I
Nolan,
answer your question, on this rundown here, you have FSU vibes, and I need you to explain what FSU vibes means. Because I have this feeling you're saying FSU vibes as in they're a contender but not a true title contender. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Where
because I take offense to that, sir. FSU did not lose to anybody. Who's to say they were not a true title contender?
I think they lose if they play an SEC schedule. But I had my Jordan Travis doubts. I have some Jackson Dart doubts. I don't know if Jackson Dart can win 3 playoff games in a row. I don't know if he can beat Alabama, A&M, LSU and company next year. Georgia too. Yeah. Dart's fine. I like Dart. He was better this year than he was last year, but he doesn't pop off the page. I don't think Jackson Dart's going to be in the Heisman finalist group. I don't think he's going to be one of the 4. I could be wrong. We'll see what year 3.
It would be like a Bo Nix Heisman. That's
maybe.
Okay, his stats might say one thing, but we know he's not the best player in college football.
Right. And what I mean by the FSU thing,
kind of Heisman, I could see.
If Ole Miss played if they played in the ACC next year with this roster, they'd be the favorite potentially. Like, you could talk me into Ole Miss being the best ACC team next year, but this schedule's hard, and the reason I put FSU vibes on the rundown is just when I was thinking about contender and suitor, FSU wasn't in the blue chip ratio this year. They obviously were very top heavy. They won big in the portal. Like, Keon Coleman was a huge ad. Jared Verse obviously was a great ad the year prior. They have a lot of dudes. They did really well in the portal, but it was top heavy. If they got hit with some injuries, they would have been in some trouble, but they played a weaker schedule, played a weaker conference. Ole Miss has got a great schedule. So that's one of the positives here. If you're looking at Ole Miss and you're trying to talk yourself into them being...
I don't know about great.
It's a great schedule for the SEC.
It's not a gauntlet, I would say. Yeah, that's fair. It's not a gauntlet, but I mean, just to share with people, they still have at LSU, Oklahoma, and Georgia on it, and at Florida. So it's not Florida.
But I mean, you'll be favored in what, 2 of those games at least?
But it's not the worst schedule I've seen for sure. It looks a little like a Missouri schedule from a few years ago. You got some Kentucky and South Carolina. There are a lot of SEC East on there. But yeah, really no one out of conference. Wake Forest, the toughest non-conference game they play. So it's not the worst I've seen for sure.
To me, when I looked at it, it was a 10-2. And 10-2 in the SEC can get you in the playoff. And that can get you in that bottom half, and you sneak in and then anything can happen. I think
that 10-2 would be more impressive than this year's 10-2.
Oh yeah, I would agree. And you look at it and I'm like, I don't think they're a title contender. I still just think they're a playoff contender. Could they win a couple games? Potentially. I just don't think Jackson Dart's going to run the gauntlet. I don't think they have the all-around depth to still... I just can't get there with Ole Miss. So when I'm hearing Ole Miss is going for it and Ole Miss is bringing all these dudes, and I'm like, they're good players. Like, Ole Miss has done really well in the portal. I just don't think it's going to be enough for them to be true title contenders. I don't even think they're going to be better than what we saw from FSU this year.
Playoff contender means something completely different, though.
Yeah.
It's like you're a top 15 team, you're a playoff contender versus like needing to be top 6 or 7. So, yeah, I think they're definitely a playoff contender. They're killing it in the portal. They're doing some serious work in the portal. So if they get a guy like Walter Nolan to add on to all of that, I think that you have to say they're a legit contender, because also
title contender.
Hey, I mean, what's a title contender? Like, TCU played for a national championship, right?
Could you see Ole Miss playing for a national title next year?
I mean, I would never predict it, but they went 10-2. And
that's what I want these people who are throwing Ole Miss as a contender. I'm like, put your name on it. Say, I can see Ole Miss in the national championship next year, because I can't.
I mean, that's fair, but I mean, it's just because we haven't seen it. But they went 10-2, and if they get better, it's like they're 11-1 and they're in the SEC championship. So it's not like they're that far off from achieving that. But I'm with you. As someone who's definitely said Ole Miss was a fraud more times than not, I think they're seeming more and more legit than they have.
And look, I like what they're doing. To be clear, I'm not hating on Ole Miss. They're doing the bet. Like, Lane Kiffin is maximizing every last bit of what he can to win at Ole Miss. Pete Golding's doing work on the recruiting trail. These are all positive. What they're doing is correct. They're finding a way to win, and they're putting all their chips in with a nice schedule, with a lot of returning talent. Like, they're doing the right things. Like, I am not disagreeing with that. But when people start throwing around the word contender, I'm like, what do you mean by that? Do you mean that they're going to be the best team in the SEC this year? You want to put your name on that? Are you sure you want to go down that road? Do it if you want to do it. I think they're going to be very good.
Mean, power rankings wise, what were they, like the 3rd best team in the SEC this year? 4th?
Going into next year?
I'm just saying this year.
I'm only talking 2024. I'm just
saying if they were 3rd,
Texas and Oklahoma are coming into this conference, Matt Green.
That's definitely a valid point. And Texas was better than them this year.
Yep. Oklahoma could be better than them next year.
They might not have been better than Ole Miss this year. We'll decide that one on October 28th.
Yeah.
In Oxford, Mississippi.
Do you think they're better than Auburn next year?
I mean, they don't play Auburn, but that's a pretty big jump for Auburn to make. I mean, that's a 6-win team. Yeah. Or were they 7 wins? 7-5?
7-5, yeah.
7-5. So yeah, I think Auburn could make that jump, but if Peyton Thorne's still the guy, like, how big of a jump are they making?
That's fair. The quarterback stuff's still quite bad. But also I think
I think they're gonna
neutral site Tennessee Ole Miss. I would pick Tennessee with Nico and company. I would go that way.
I'm sure you would.
Could be wrong, but we'll see. Final one
Georgia
here,
Bulldog,
Matt Green.
November 9th, traveling to Oxford, so that'll be a big time one.
That'll be a sneaky huge game. But look,
and then they got a late bye, and then Florida and Mississippi State.
Well, this is a 2-bye season for everybody, which will be weird.
And we got Ole Miss, Mississippi State on a Saturday. It looks
late. They moved it. I don't like that.
Man, I love that game on Thanksgiving night.
I'm sure they didn't like it. I'm sure families didn't really like that. That was like something they had to do, or maybe, but no, I preferred that.
I was a big fan. I watched the Lions. Watch the Lions at noon, and then watch Ole Miss. The Cowboys at some point will play, and then Ole Miss, Mississippi State at night. Is A&M Texas? Do we know what day that is?
Isn't it Friday?
Thanksgiving. They put on Thanksgiving sometimes, right?
No, they put it on Friday. The Friday after Thanksgiving, like Black Friday.
Yeah, man, I'm disappointed by that. Egg Bowl on Thursday, A&M Texas on Friday. That's rivalry weekend's all about.
When's November 30th?
I think I just looking at. I think that's a Saturday, actually.
Is it? Let's see. I'm pulling it up right now.
Yeah, that's a Saturday.
I guess they are playing Saturday this year. I thought they were doing it on Friday.
Maybe Arkansas, Missouri. They'll keep that Friday slot.
Yeah.
They seem to like. Who knows?
That's sad. And it was a Thanksgiving Day game from 2008 to 2011. So you're right. I thought it was the Friday, but it was Thanksgiving.
Okay. Have we talked since the SEC schedule release? Did we even talk about that? That was a whole thing to get into.
We're not doing that. Tennessee's going to go 12-0. Final thing here, Matt Green.
Do they have a conference next year? Who does Tennessee? NC State? Is that the only good? Okay.
Good non-conference game, yeah.
And these Big Ten schedules released though, like Michigan playing Texas next year, and like Oregon. It's or maybe they play Washington. Yeah, there's some good ones
for sure. Final one here, and we'll wrap up tonight, Matt Green. Most intriguing quarterback move in the portal for you was who?
I have a couple different ways to go with this. So I'm gonna start with the guys that have committed places. Dylan Gabriel and Dante Moore both going to Oregon is kind of the most intriguing thing, because it's like, I guess we're just building rosters now. It's like, like what we got to have a first and second stringer. Who knows? Like, battle it out. Maybe that's the new approach. You just get whoever you can get, battle it out, go to the portal again next year.
But that's hard to do, man. That's a lot of money too. That's the other problem, is that's expensive. To do what Oregon's doing is expensive.
Maybe. And Dante Moore, maybe he's just he knows he's not going to play right away, and he's just like, look, I should have stayed committed to Oregon. I made a terrible mistake. So maybe that's all it is correcting his decision from the previous year. But Will Howard going to USC to play for Lincoln Riley. It's just, when I look at the pedigree of Lincoln Riley quarterbacks, it's the whole Sesame Street. Which of these things is not like the other? Like, Will Howard does not fit with Kyler Murray and Jalen Hurts and Baker Mayfield and Caleb Williams, like just Heisman after Heisman. And then Will Howard, is he about to go off?
I don't know, but if it was at Oklahoma, like, we would be like, good get by Oklahoma. Like, that's the whole thing. It's a USC thing. It's not a Lincoln Riley thing. Like, if it was Oklahoma who stole Will Howard from Kansas State and Lincoln was still there, we'd be like, oh, great get, because Will Howard's really good. Like, Will Howard's been great for Kansas.
Kyler Murray, but I mean, what Jalen Hurts, what he was at Bama versus what he did at Oklahoma, like, it was night and day.
Like, do you doubt Howard's gonna have a great year for Lincoln? He's gonna be great for Lincoln. It's
you're
weird
right.
Him being in Southern California.
That's why I'm intrigued, because like, I've always liked Will Howard, probably more than most.
Yeah.
But I wasn't like, okay, if Lincoln Riley is like the QB whisperer over here is believing in Will Howard, I don't know. I'm wondering, was Kansas State holding him back? Is this guy capable of going for a Heisman or something? I don't know. That's one that just kind of intrigued me there.
No, I don't know. I think Howard's a fun one. Will Rogers, I'm curious about, because he's not like, the arm's not as explosive. Like, Michael Penix throws bombs and has a great deep ball. Will Rogers at Washington, I'm very curious to see how Kalen DeBoer pivot, because it's going to be interesting. There's going to be a drop off in talent. You're not going to have those receivers that Michael Penix has had this year. I'm curious if Will Rogers can keep it going for the Huskies, and Kalen DeBoer can maximize what we saw from Will the last couple of years prior to this new staff with Mike Leach. But I'm also just curious if it works. Like, that's one I'm just circled. I'm like, that's one. It's like the Milton Hooker thing, where it's like, I don't know if Will Rogers is actually good. And I'm curious, he's going to place a lot of big-time defenses in the Big Ten for Washington. And Kalen DeBoer is one of the best coaches in the sport, best offensive minds. I'm very curious if he can make that work and Will Rogers gets back on track in his final college year.
I'm with you there. I haven't bought Will Rogers, to be honest. So I think I'm with you. And honestly, I think Penix got a little too much love in general. Like, I think a lot more of it was about the playmakers that Washington has. So, I mean, without those guys too, his job's going to be a whole lot tougher. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, going to the Big Ten, like, I don't know what some air raid, what that looks like, go to the Big Ten. Like, maybe those people in Minnesota and Wisconsin won't know how to defend that. But I don't know. I think I'm not necessarily buying that either.
No.
The one I think the most overrated quarterback in the portal, I get De'Aaron King vibes. No disrespect to De'Aaron King.
New quarterback coach
but
at
he wasn't
SMU, Houston.
He wasn't what people thought he was going to be when he went to Miami. And that's what I feel about Cam Ward. I feel like Cam Ward is like going to be treated that like he's kind of a plug and play. And like, if someone's a quarterback away from winning a title, he can come in there and help you win a title. And I'm not sure he's that guy. Like, so I don't know. You've seen a lot of Miami, a lot of Florida State stuff with him. Like, I don't know what Ohio State is going to do at quarterback. They seem like someone who's like a quarterback away. I don't know, but Cam Ward, he feels like he's going to be treated as like the name that everyone talks about that's going to take someone to the next level. And I'm not sure he's that guy.
That's fair. Florida State, man, if they end up with DJU, I'm like, DJU was not good this year. This was not the reason that Oregon State was cooking with gas. The drop off there, and I think I don't know, Florida State losing a lot of guys in the NFL draft. Like, they need Cam Ward a lot more than they need DJU. So I think if you're a Florida State fan, you're really hoping, regardless of some wondering about how Cam Ward does jump into the ACC from Wazoo. I mean, you want Cam Ward 11 times out of 10 over TJU if you're a Florida State fan.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the one that is he the highest ranked quarterback in the portal rankings, Aiden Childs from Oregon State going to Michigan State with Jonathan Smith. Like, I've never seen this guy play. So I know he was like a top 100 recruit coming out, but like, this guy, for him to be the number one quarterback, is this going to be like just some Cam Newton stuff that no one was ready for? And he just takes the college football world by storm? Like, I have no idea, but
maybe.
But yeah, for him to be the number one ranked quarterback in the portal that I would think most college football fans don't really know about. I'm a big Jonathan Smith guy, and Michigan State is one of those programs that like we've seen be good in recent history, and it's just been a while. So, well, other than the 1 year with Mel Tucker, it's been a while. So I'm curious to see what they do next year.
Well, that's all I've got, Matt Green. Fun show. We shook the cobwebs off here a little bit after a week away, and a lot of stuff happening. National Signing Day in the books, early National Signing Day, that is. A couple big ones will pop up down the line here over the next couple weeks. But bowl season well underway, whatever's left of it. Tennessee plays in the first. Georgia, Florida State. We'll see who's left over to play in that game between two programs that very much don't want to be there.
Yeah, at least Georgia's. I haven't heard many opt-outs. Like every Florida State key player basically has opted out to this point. So I don't know. It's definitely not going to. It'll still be more fans than a regular Miami home game, but it's not going to be a lot of enthusiasm in there.
No. Matt Green, always a pleasure. I'll talk to you very soon.